Okay.
Bulletproof transaction.
Who's privileged?
What is it, for sale?
Yeah.
That would be the way to try to. Here?
Yeah, well, where's your PowerPoint? Where you going? Okay.
They can hear on the.
Turn it up so they can hear you.
Girls are coming in.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning. Can you hear us on Zoom?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect.
So we're going to continue to talk series tactics that are taking place, that take place in any market. One thing we know about the real estate market that it's continuously doesn't stay still. So a real estate market is not always an up market or not always a down market. It's not always a buyer's market. It's not always a seller's market. It kind of fluctuates and goes kind of in between. However, when that shift happens, not always obvious, or it's not always like right in our face to where we see that shift taking place. Sometimes we may need to don't feel it or we don't recognize it early enough to know that that's what's taking place. Okay, so like right now, which is probably a predominantly seller's market, right? We went from a shift of a balanced market into a seller's market. From being a super hot seller's market to getting to a little bit more of a balanced, not yet, but this is all different tactics on how to handle when a shift takes place. Why is it important for us to be? What happens to our business typically when a market shifts? It shifts with it, right? Perfect. Thank you, sir. It shifts with it, meaning the market, if the business dries, if the market shifts to a dry market, more than likely, if we don't do anything to that, to adjust, our business is going to take a little bit of that dry hit. It becomes a buyer's market, and we are solely working with a seller's mentality or a seller's mindset. What's going to happen to our business? It's going to shift along with it. So it's very important that we implement where we appoint for them. So one of the shift tactics that we talk about, which is I think is very, especially now that's taking place and we need to focus on, is tactic number 12, which is bulletproofing the transaction. You guys on Zoom still hear me? So, bulletproofing the transaction. Who wants to take a stab at explaining what does the concept of bulletproofing mean?
Or seeing any problems that might.
Along those lines of other factors that get contract one way or the other. Just because we have a signed contract, not a deal until actually the sale takes place between the buyer and seller. They sign and the seller gets paid and the buyer brings in the loan and gets the keys, and that's when the deal is done, right? However, bulletproofing walking through a solid transaction or a solid without having to be affected by what's going to come from the outside. Now, do issues arise? How we handle those issues and how we prepared for them. So the concept of bulletproofing the transaction, it's usually happening because of a very simple premise, right? It's a very simple premise. Buyer and seller get into a transaction. Two things are for sure. Buyer in his head thinks he paid too much. You got to keep that in mind. Every time you talk to your buyer or seller, no matter how much the level of excitement is. Oh my God. Put over to the seller. The premise, that's where those issues may arise throughout the transaction. Even though it's a win-win, however, the buyer may think in his head, I paid too much. Seller may think in his head, I got too little. So that's where we need to keep that. As it relates to inspection and repairs, appraisals, others. Talk about the loan approval and funding. Whether it's on the buyer side or whether it's on the deadlines, some bulletproofing strategies. Main ideas in there. Remember, owners feel they are selling too low, and buyers feel that they are paying too much. Who has experienced that? Even when you have a deal under contract. On through right now. Not panic about, oh my God, this is. Talk about it is the more important one. It's not as solid as a yes in another market. Because there's a lot of all kinds of concessions and all kinds of activity that's going on with the listing. Sometimes is faced with 7, 8, 12, 13 offers, and they're all saying yes. So the yes on a contract is not as solid as saying no, and one person saying yes, okay, that I know for a fact they want. No, I have everybody that wants it. How do I, what's good and what's not, to make sure I pick the right offer? So the yes in this market is not as, just simply saying, yes, I want the home is not enough, is what this is trying to say. All right. So what we want to learn is, first of all, we want to make sure we are aware. Is the deal. Then we're going to try to see to have some good solutions and good scripts around it. What do I say to my seller? How we avoid the problems. Maybe some of those problems could be taken care of or addressed before we. And then maintaining good and frequent communication with all the parties involved, whether it's the lender, the seller, the buyer, the other agent, so on and so forth. So we're going to get to that. Areas in a transaction. This is what we see. This is what we see on almost probably every deal, give or take. Buyer's remorse. One. Buyer would say, kinds of formats, but we'll come to that in a minute. Inspections and repairs, appraisals, loan approval and funding, and then the fifth one, just simple communication issues. Arrive at a transaction and your seller did, or your buyer did not know that the property is in a flood zone. Wasn't communicated to them. Not know that there's an association and they don't allow fences. Wasn't communicated to them. Or did not tell you that he has a third on the property and he actually owes more than what he thought he owed. That was never communicated. Please be aware. If you not experience any of these, you're not an agent. You're not doing business. Those are normal. Those are going to come up and happen. Want to tell me if you've been doing real estate for a while and you're an agent and you're doing well? I'm going to ask you how many times you've had buyers back out. You tell me never. How many times you've had issues with inspections and repairs? Means you haven't done many transactions. Countless transactions go through buyer's remorse, inspection issues, appraisal issues, loan issues, or simple communication stuff. So this is normal. I don't want any of you to feel like, oh my God, I have this deal and this is happening. I must be the only one experiencing it. Not the case. Tony, how many of those have you had of those 5 from everyone? Ray. I'm sorry. What is it? Yeah.
I'm new, so I can not.
So you're gonna experience those. Yeah. We're gonna give you stars. So every time you get one of those, you should put it like a little. Ajay Sabah, how many of those you've had? Multiple times, right? It's normal. It's normal. So be prepared. It's just how we deal with it and how we handle it. So we're gonna go at it one by one. Starting off with buyer's remorse. Of buyer's remorse, also call it cold feet. Bidders, whatever, like it's all kinds of stuff, right? Simply put, it's buyer's remorse. Who can tell me how buyer's remorse comes about?
20,000 over it.
Okay.
20, 30 over it.
Okay.
I think so. I'm actually kind of, I was going through this with my transaction right now. Finally, and then now that our offer's accepted, everybody can relax. They're like, other people come in, the sister comes. Like, now they don't want it anymore, even though they were extremely.
I'm listed on here. Starting off with if there people, buyers are listening to the news just like listen to the news. The buyers are making a very, very, very hefty investment into an asset that they typically don't buy regularly. Do we agree? How often do you buy a home in your lifetime? Once, twice, maybe 3 times. So the investment itself or the purchase itself is a big one. So buyers are understandable in that sense. Okay, I understand why buyers remorse is going to happen because their eye or their focus is on that investment that they're making. So starting off with the news reports that make them absolutely sure they have made the worst decision of their life. What starts to come up when they're buying a home? Let me take you back on this example. Who had a certain car they wanted to buy? Okay. What happens when you start thinking about the car that you want to buy? What happens on the road when you're driving? Start seeing that car everywhere.
Right.
I've seen it before. Now that I want an F-150. What happens to a buyer? They say, I want to buy a home. What sort of news starts coming at them, magnified, and all of a sudden they're attracting and they're putting their ear and listening to it? About what? About housing, right? About real estate, about how the market's going to crash, how interest rates are going up, how, oh my God, it's the worst. There's not enough supply of this and not supply, right? because they are focused on that. So our job is to make sure that we are gets under contract. We need to stay in touch and what's going on. We'll come to some of the solutions. Another point is who do they have in their surrounding sphere, right? Friends and family, or actually let's start with friends who tell them they're nuts for buying a home now. Who's usually telling someone it's a terrible time to buy a house? What is that person doing? Not buying a house, does not own a home, typically probably cannot, right? Most people are jealous. They're buying a home instead of being happy for them. Oh my God, it's crazy, you're buying a home. They make it sound like they're the smarter client than the person that's actually buying the home. Does that make sense? So, and then you have the well-meaning, and put it well-meaning family members or friends who say, you paid that much for the house? Really? You paid that much for a house? They usually show up at the inspection sometimes, and they ask them, and they say, your friends, and you have family members who mean well. That's what creates a lot of the buyers' second thoughts and second doubts in their head. Anybody else want?
They always say that in the beginning. They finally give in and they're like, I know these houses, but that's the only way I'm gonna get a house. My thing is like, how do you,
Right.
like, they don't know.
What we're going to talk. Go ahead. Oh, anyone else? But you have to, two things. You have to shift the conversation. You have to shift from the conversation from the price, house itself. The why. Thank you, Tony. You got to bring it back to the why. Remember why we're buying that house. Because you get to send your kids to the better school. You're going to get to live in a better neighborhood. You got to take their mind off of the price, off of the investment, off of the money that's being, and put the focus on the house. One, that's from an emotional standpoint. Doesn't hurt to put back up and show them how fair the price that they paid. This is what sold in the neighborhood. This is what sold. This is what sold. This is what sold. This is where the current market is. So you did pay a fair price for the home. But more importantly, called marking the moment. We talk about market. We're talking about like moments that matter. Remember, I don't know if some of you attended some of my training before. We talk about moments that matter, right? Moments that matter, meaning like events that are going to stuck in your life, stuck in your head, that are important, that you can right away say, okay, I know exactly what I was doing. I know exactly who was with me. I remember that day clearly like it was yesterday. Celebrate their offer being accepted and mark that moment as a triumph or as a success. Whether it's a high five, whether it's a hug, cheer, whether it's a cup of coffee, a glass of wine, whatever it is that you got to do, you got to celebrate that event as a success to them. It cannot just pass by as, yeah, we got the offer accepted. Okay, so now here's the next step. Then it passes by as a normal event that they can easily back out of.
I discuss with my buyers to get a lot of times, maybe it's not worth them to put that.
Yeah. Your language, that's a great point, Sharon. Thank you. Makes a lot of sense because in your language, they matter. And how you, okay? So you have to constantly, and I hate to use the word reselling, but you have to constantly sell them on that decision that they make. You have to constantly resell them. Nice job. Great buy. I love that home for you. Excellent choice. I'm so happy we got this. I am so excited about what we're going to do. I can't wait to see your home once you move in and do the things you need to do. Oh, I can't wait to see little Charlie play back. Because this is, and I'm not saying be fake. Fake. If you genuinely care about your people and you care about them getting the home, show it. Because they want to see that. They don't want to, they want to make sure that they're not on their own. All buy the home. Guess what? We all bought it. So it's a process. So we got to celebrate. So continue to tell your client on the decision that they made.
At the same time, it's a also a piece of shit. Make sure you let. Really caring about your commission if you're trying to. Buyer ended up buying a house. I was like, what the hell are you buying? But foundation. Mechanics were good. The house just needed a lot. My job, what like I do is I point out the stuff that I know is a big money cost to them, and I say at the end of the day, if you're comfortable with it, then fine.
Yeah.
It's up to you. It's your house.
That's so that we're going to get to when we talk about the inspection. You're absolutely right, and you're absolutely in the sense that I want to make sure that you're not offending them by
Yeah.
putting your taste and your choice of a home on the home. Protect them and have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure they're not buying a destroyed or a not solid structure. Both are correct. In this case, we're talking about buyer's remorse where we haven't even gotten to the. We're talking about they got the offer, they got to accept it. Now they're having second thoughts. Now let's switch gears and talk about sellers for a minute. The seller's remorse, even though it's uncommon, seller's remorse. Tell me a little bit about the seller's remorse. What happened?
He was a. Thank you so much, and he was so happy, so he calls me 2 days later, he goes, I don't know. I think my mom pushed me into it because all that, so I pointed out how much he got for the house. He's ready to move right now, and he sold it at a perfect time, and a day. Ready to back out.
Yeah. So seller's remorse, even though it's uncommon or not very common, it does happen where people say, I'm going to sell my house, and then they remember the original premise we talked about. What was the original premise? What do buyers think? What do sellers think?
They didn't get enough.
Okay. So I don't know. We want to be able to allow them the space to vent or express their frustration. Not ever shut them down and say, no, come on, man, you can't do that. Let them express their frustration. Early on, it's hard, but you have to learn how to just sit back, say what they need to say, instead of preventing them, or because you understand the original premise. Because you understand originally, sellers in their head think they could have always gotten more. Outlets and all that stuff. What do sellers have? Friends and family and news outlets. What are sellers doing? Sellers are saying, yeah, we sold our house, and their neighbor. They give you this? No. Now he's having second thoughts in his head. Very, very important. Make sure you bring back the seller to the why, just like you do with the buyer. Bring back the seller to the why. Why are we selling? I want to get to Florida. I want to relocate. So make sure that we are staying on track to that goal. Now, some of the tactics as well in a seller's remorse, reminding them of the CMA, especially when they bring up the, hey, I think we sold for too little. Okay, because that's CMA, and say, okay, here's what sold, for the home that we're selling. Remind the sellers of their motivation to move. Same thing you would do with the buyer. Remember, we got to get to the new school district, we got to get to the bigger home, so on and so forth. The destination. Discuss the risks of starting over. This one is very important. And there's a good line that you can use with your sellers that I've always used. And essentially, I tell them, say for example, we get under contract, and then the seller says, okay, I think I'm not buying, I don't want to go through this home, through the sale. Understand, essentially, you are now buying the home back. You sold it for. The seller says, I changed my mind. Essentially, the seller is buying the home back for $250,000 because he had the 250. Now he's saying, I don't want it anymore. Here's the 250. Give me my home back. Psychologically, you explain to them, you're willing to buy the home back at this price. And 9 out of 10 times they're like, no. Okay, but that's what you're doing. So make sure that your seller understands of actually taking that home back or saying, I want it back. Now, risks of starting over. Many of you probably haven't done yet. You will experience that. By saying, I don't want to sell to this party anymore. I want to change my mind and I want to sell it to someone else, or I want to turn around and get less buyers for the home or less money for the home. What else?
You might not get.
That's what Saray is saying. Like less money, less buyers. You may not sell at all. Cost of having that property. What are you paying on? Mortgage. What else? More interest. What else?
Taxes.
Yes, thank you. Taxes. What else?
Water bill.
Water bill. What else? You understand how actually taking that step back could actually end up costing more, even though you're going or in the hopes to chase a higher number or a higher price, you actually may end up losing. So you may not experience a lot of sellers remorse. When you do, especially in a market where people are throwing offers at properties after they sold, and then seller gets up in the morning and offer at his door, allows him more than the offer he accepted. Be prepared that communication.
How do you handle that?
That's a good question.
The time that the property sits on the market kind of determines that issue not to. When you're gonna face that, you're gonna face that a lot when sellers end up selling to the first offer they get. And people are not aware that the property is listed. They find out that the property is listed, oh, I could have given you this, oh, I could have given you that. If you're doing same day sale, if you're doing pre-listing, doing off-market transactions, that's gonna be very common. If the property's been on the market 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, set up a deadline for highest and best, and you've done what you need to do, chances of someone coming in and saying, oh, I could have paid you, where were you? So I always tell the seller, where were they? The market, the home's been listed for 4 days. We were coming soon for a couple of days before. So it's been on the market for 4 or 5 days or a week. How come they waited till? Usually those offers are not legitimate.
So you will say that it's a buy.
Market that we're in, there's just so much demand. Yeah. Okay. Closing as soon as possible. Closing as soon as possible. And this is not for you to just get paid. I know a lot of agents are like, oh, close as soon as possible so we can get paid. No, close as soon as possible because by elongating the time frame of how long sellers and buyers, all you're doing is you're opening it up. You're opening it up for more doubt. You're opening up for someone to come in and say, yeah, I don't know. And then someone else talks and like, I don't know. Someone else talks, right? And then that only means you as a that's where the excitement level is. Excitement goes like this, right?
Sounds horrible.
So they're excited, and then they hit a climax of excitement. Oh my God, we love it. Yeah. They go over the payment. They go over the cash to close. Then the escrow account. They go shop for furniture and see that they not as high. We got to continue to revive that excitement. We got to continue talking to them and telling them about what a great purchase they made, what an amazing job they did. Good job, excellent. I love that home. So forth, love that for you. So the sellers and buyers don't have second, reduce the time buyers and sellers have to second guess their decision. Is another issue that comes up typically where buyers and sellers may or may not come to an agreement. Who has had a deal fall over? Raise of hands. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Probably get to a buyer's market. More deals fall because of inspection. The buyers have choices. Buyers can say, okay, I want this house because I can get the second house done. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Seller. If you're not going to do driveway and a brand new water heater, thank you. Seller will be like, no, please wait. Now we're having a lot of waiving their inspections and stuff. So this is things are coming up. However, now I'm seeing more where actually offers are being accepted. Time around. By the way, yesterday, yesterday was down 40% from where it was the same time last year. Down 40% from where less buyers. Around interest rates. Yesterday's rate was 4.985. So rates are up. Down 40%. Same time. Okay. So that's because still new construction is not as vibrant as it should be. Selling their homes, you know, in the amount of quantities that we want it to be. So demand is still up there. However, we shortage of demand down to 7. Now maybe to 6 and 5 and 4. Eventually, we're going to get right about equal. Okay. So inspections and repair are going to come up. If you're conversating with the seller, ahead of time, prepare the sellers for what to expect in your market. In this market, this done, and I want that done, and I want that. In a buyer's market or a balanced market, Mr. Seller, oh, the buyers go ahead and do an inspection. They're gonna probably come back. Now, some of those items, maybe $1,000, some maybe $2,000. We are gonna be able to let you know that this is coming up. If you're selling it for too low, so that you know that this is going to come up, or this might. You acknowledge their feelings and concerns. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about, inspection. Now, when the sellers tell you, yeah, but no, they want $1,000, the heck with it, I don't want to do it. What's the conversation on risk of losing the buyer? What are we? So the same thing, Mr. Buyer, Mr. Seller, I just want to understand correctly. You're willing to buy this house over $1,000. You're willing to buy the house back at the price that you got. No, okay. Are we going to work together on this? Because when in their mind, they don't think of the price that they're selling it for. They always think of the price that they're dishing out of pocket. I'm going to pay $1,000 out of pocket, but you're getting X amount. Now, I highly recommend it. Especially in this market. You have a pre-inspection report. You can always bring them and document them. Say the inspector comes in and brings up, okay, there's a crack in the wall where the water is coming. Okay, seller already did that. Here's the inspection report. It pointed out this, and we already did it. 2, what does it do to the buyer that's buying the property? when you give them an inspection report, it's already been done 45 pages or whatever detail of everything that the property is. Now you're gonna deal with an offer with no inspection. More than likely, you're gonna get an offer right from an agent that says, oh, the inspection is done. Here's a copy of the inspection, and you still, after it's shown them that you want to do an inspection, of that buyer. If you're on the seller side, I give the inspection report and they say, I want to do my own inspection. Call the inspector and talk with them. It's a third party that's doing it, right? And now you put everybody on an even field. So best case scenario, and if there's any repairs that need to be done, hey, we went ahead and did them anyways. I know you sellers already handled them, been taken care of. You avoid the renegotiating. That's what buyers use it as a tool to negotiate. We're talking about the conversation with the customers as your sellers. So which side are you on now? In this conversation, which side are you on?
Well, based on my.
No, in this conversation, you're an agent. Buyers and you work with sellers. Which side are you on here in this conversation? Sellers have. So I want you to think as a listener. That makes sense. I'm not talking about the buyer. When you're the buyer conversation, yes, we're gonna start. The deal for ourselves. I'm saying as a seller side, your seller is going to be concerned. Or you as a seller, what do you think? Take away that advantage from the buyer by saying, now, here we go. Conversations with inspections about the buyers. Recommend inspectors you trust. Educate buyers about what you are in the process and what comes next. Where you are in the process and what comes next. Remind buyers that inspector documents everything they see. Help buyers focus on the big picture and important issues. Okay, it's very important. First, I know many of you probably do not like to attend inspections. Take it for whatever it's worth. If you're dealing with a first-time home buyer, or you're dealing with an amiable, or you're dealing with someone who is not sure about the process, by all means, attend the inspection. Why? You attend the inspection, what I mean, like, you can let them in to the home, but I'm saying actively be in there while they're doing the inspection. Or and do your thing. But I'm saying, like, why is it important to attend the inspection? Which hat we have on now? The buyer's agent. Okay,
We're
so
trying to protect the buyers, so we're trying to babysit them. Hey, there's the contact or
right. So
explaining the process.
A little bit of hold.
So it's like being there to like reassure.
They don't know what an inspection is anyways. They don't know what a 40-page report means. They don't know. Now, what is the job? Is to find every little thing in document. Job is to go and do the job on behalf of the bank. The inspector's job is to go out there and find everything. Now, not everything that's on the inspection report is a deal breaker. To the buyer, even though everything is going to be documented, we're going to look at big items on the report. Crack in the foundation. Installation is not properly done, right? Water heater is leaking. Not working. Plumbing issue, right? Those type of things. We're not going to worry about if the door handle, if the door is creaking, or the door handle is not working, or if the plug is not fixed. Those are little things, minor things. So we have to keep them in the big picture. Very important. A lot of deals with first-time home guys at the inspection. Guys at the inspection because the agent gets us. We get frustrated when we're working with the first time. We get frustrated when we're working with a young couple that don't know anything. We get frustrated. We get frustrated because we are not able to connect. Why, when they did the inspection, whatever came up is not that important or is not that, because we weren't there. Well, every time after any inspection, I go through the summary. And I'll tell them, I've seen many of those inspection reports. I'm going to tell you, they want to see you take control and help them. They want to know that you're with them. They don't want to be like, oh, did you do the inspection? Okay, I'll tell you. Yeah, GFIs don't work, and there's a lot of issues in that house. That's not good. If that's what the inspector, if that's what you level into buying, is down. Now they're going to tell the seller, tell you, I'm out, thank you, I don't want the home anymore. We have to be involved in the inspection. Yes, ma'am.
I had an inspector tell us that, it's gonna cost $30,000 to replace that.
Yeah. But usually what I do is I'll say, I appreciate that, thank you very much. I'll pull my buyer and I'll say, no problem. If we still want to back out, we have enough time to back out. Let's just get a second. I might recommend for you vendor that I dealt with. They can give us a second opinion. Give us an estimate. So it's a great segue to this. What's the ending the inspection? Answer all your customers' questions. Know what's on your client's mind, right? Inspector would be walking up and then he'll do one of these and the padding. And the client's thinking the house is going to fall off. Right? The buyer's going to think, like, oh my God, this house is not stable. Or they go up the stairs and there's a squeaking. And then, you know, I'd highly recommend if you put a, screw up into the thing, yeah, or you can just take this down and reconstruct the, right? So we want to keep issues small. Remember also, when you're doing your inspection on used structures, these are old homes. What's going to happen to old homes? They wear on over time, right? You're not buying a brand new construction. You're buying something that's being used and being done and being, handled with, right, for a long period of time. So issues are going to come up. So make sure that you keep things small. Provide vendor referrals if needed. Let them know. I might recommend someone for you to at least give you an opinion. We have some time. Before we say we don't want it, let's at least get what the issue is. All right.
or negotiate.
We're gonna get to that in a minute. Here we go, negotiation. So when we find out how much the items will cost, very important before we do that, we actually call the listing agent, get a feel of where things are at with him and his seller, and how willing is he to your ally, right? That's the person that's going to be on your team to work it together. So before I talk to the buyer about putting it officially and putting it on paper and saying, hey, we would like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 done, and then send the addendum, I'm going to call the listing of the items ahead of time. I want to say, I'm not worried about 1, 2, 3. However, my buyer has a big issue with this. We're going to put it on give them a heads up. We're going to put it on the addendum, asking that the seller do 1, 2, 3. It helps them because now he's going to go to his seller and put the seller's hat on and try to explain to him why we should work with this, help them, and not buy the house back from them. See, you're going to be playing on both ends. One day you're on the other side, but you need to understand how both dynamics work. So adopt a positive mindset. Let's make a deal. You always want to try to what they're called deal breakers. Big crack in the foundation that it's going to cost too much and buyer doesn't want to deal with it. Okay, we move on to the next house, done. But 9 out of 10 times, you can make a deal happen with the small issues of inspection. So you always want to continue to have that mindset, adopt that mindset of let's make a deal work. Now, you may offer to pick up some of that stuff that's like the little items between you and the other agent, or you may negotiate it between your buyer and your seller. So if it's 500, you may say buyer will pay 250, seller will pay 250. Fine, let's go. So try to always negotiate and be a facilitator, not a deal breaker. Be a deal maker. All right, home warranty. This is very important, and honestly, I don't see many do it at a high level, but we should do it more often. Provides you a lot of peace of mind, especially you as the agent. When you sell the home and you offer the buyer, or they have the seller offer the buyer, or the buyer pays for a home warranty, it makes your life a whole lot easier, at least for a year or two, where they're not calling and saying, hey, we went to the house, opened up the faucet, and oh, there was a leak here, and the leak. Who's getting those calls? You are getting those calls. I highly recommend you talk to your client about a home warranty. Talk to them about a home warranty. It helps. And it helps during your inspection to eliminate all little stuff that they're sweating. So we're gonna get a home warranty to cover our basic mechanics, water heater, air condition, heat, any plumbing issues, whatever. We're gonna get a home warranty to cover those appliances as well. Okay, good. Yeah, I'm not worried about the door. Buyer will tell you, I'm not worried about the door. I'm not worried about the carpet. I'm not worried about the padding. As long as those big items are covered, I'm good. So we get a home warranty. $425 or $375. Okay. So is alleviate buyers' worries, and in the future, when a repair is needed, new owners call the warranty company rather than you. And trust me, you are going to get the call. Who in here has gotten a call from a buyer that just bought a property, closed on it, and then something happened and they called you? Same thing. This will help at least say, hey, there's a home warranty, call the company, they got you. Done. All right. So who can share with me some best practices on how they resolve, how they do their own, so you can share with the room, how they do their own.
They get the inspection report, because they kind of freak out because it's a long list. So they're like, oh my God, there's like 40 things. But but you don't have to fix everything on there because it's not. I is going to have these little issues in there.
Yeah. Down, calmer into.
Space in your mind. So if you
If your buyer does an inspection and it's a 40 page, 45 page, ask them to read the summary page. The page that they want to go back to, then they can go into the report. And if the inspector does not give them a summary page, ask for a summary page. Because I'm not gonna read 40 pages, right? But I'm going to read the summary page. And on the summary page, it's going to say grading the backyard, fixing the downspouts to be away from the home, alarm not working, panel is not 100%, whatever, right? So you want to make sure you have a summary page, at least to go. And on the summary page, we're going to pick our battles, right? We're going to pick which, by you understanding, a minor issue, this is a major issue. And if you don't know if it is a minor or major, ask. All kinds of stuff. So someone will tell you, yeah, this is nothing. We've had that done before. Or we can tell the buyer, talk the buyer into it. But just like we can't dismiss it with a seller, I understand why you might think it's a big deal. I get it. But here's the reality of it is this. So it's on how you handle the situation. All right. One other thing. So we talked about the beginning, we talked about the buyer's remorse. We talked about inspections. The third thing that come up is funding, right? Funding. And what I mean by funding is basically the lender. So on the buyer side, one point there were buyer pre-approvals column floating around left and right. Right? Somebody comes in, talks to the lender, and says, "Yeah, I got you pre-approved. Here's a letter." Those papers are not worth anything. So make sure, first and foremost, your buyer is using a reputable lender. And we all know what the criteria of a reputable lender is. Reputable lender is someone who is known in the community, has done transactions with, that we know can take it to the finish line, that we probably heard of, or if they're not known, and they're new lenders, there's nothing wrong in new young that are starting out. Everybody started off something. At least have a reference that they can say, I work for X. Late to. So make sure your buyers are, first of all, working with a reputable lender, one, because there's a lot of unreputable lenders out there. That's only going to mean problems down the road. Make sure your buyers are pre-approved for a mortgage loan before showing them houses. We talk about that all the time. And I know there are a ton of agents out there that get so happy about someone saying, I want to buy a house, they jump and they start running and showing them. And in reality, the buyer is really not capable or able to buy a home. Always have one or two lenders, maybe two or more in your repertoire of lenders that you can recommend for the buyer. Why? Because not everybody meshes. So I have some people that will understand lenders that they won't work well with other lenders. And sometimes they may like the way one lender works, but they may not like the way the other. Also, what if the lender that you're recommending is not available to get to them in the time frame that they want? You want to be able to get them in touch with someone else. Submit a parallel application for backup funding when you don't know or trust the buyer's lender. This one, if you're on the seller, if you're on the buyer side and they're working with a lender that you're not sure, I always use recommendation of, I know Francisco, you're working with Saray. I want to let you know we do have an affiliate lender. Oh, you trust her as well, and that's fine. I'm not trying to take away from it. I just want to let you know in the event you decide, hey, maybe they can match or beat what deal Saray is giving. I only do it if I don't trust the buyer's lender. It is not my affiliate lender, but she's a lender elsewhere. I'm not having that conversation. Or I'm not snatching business from one reputable lender. Say, hey, just so you know, we're here for you. I got my lender here for you. Advise your buyers on keeping their finances in good shape. This one is very important. There's like a 10 commandments of like what buyers should or should not do. We're going to get to it in a minute. Qualified versus pre-approved, very important. Very important. There's a lot of buyers that are going, guys, online. They're going online. Lendingtree.com, loans.com, loandepot, whatever, all kinds of sites where they would enter their basic information, email, how much money you make, what do you think your credit score is, where do you live, are you renting, how much you paying in rent, do you have any mortgage payments or car payments currently, how's your credit, what, right? So they're filling out like a one-page questionnaire, right, of what the items are, and the lender is issuing them online a pre-qualification that in their head and in their mind, because they don't know, they think it's a solid pre-approval. And then they take that paper and say, okay, I'm pre-qualified, I'm good, or I'm pre-approved, I'm good. Now let me go on Zillow. And then they go on Zillow and start looking, they click, or they call a sign, and then they get a hold of you. And now you ask them a question, are you pre-approved? Make sure we're always vetting. What is it that they have? Are they pre-qualified or are they really pre-approved? Have you really had a conversation? So who wants to read this out loud for me? Pre-qualified.
Buyer may receive a loan for a certain.
Perfect. Thank you, Sharon. So the buyer may receive a loan for a certain amount based on minimal information provided to the lender. They really haven't had the chance to sit down and get a full-blown pre-approval. They just said, yeah, if you go find the home, we're probably going to give you 250,000, no problem, go ahead. And all of a sudden, they think it's in stone. Who wants to read the pre-approved one?
Buyer is most likely to receive them.
Thank you, Z. So pre-approved buyer is someone who actually gave the lender some detailed information, application, copies of their income, bank statements, so on and so forth. And the lender determined that, yes, based on that information that was provided to me, go ahead and find the home. All we need left is an appraisal, title, and that's it. And then you're good to go. The 10 Commandments. This is very important. It's very important for your buyers to make sure they don't do. Thou shalt not change jobs, become self-employed, or quit your job. Those happen. My guy decided to stop working and become an Uber driver overnight in the middle of the purchase. He was a butcher, worked at a meat market. Said one day he got tired and he got in an argument with the owner, and he said, well, I quit and I'm doing Uber. I signed up for Uber, I'm doing Uber. Well, guess what happened to the loan? It fell through because you changed jobs and it's not even the right job, and you went self-employed. No salary. You went from salary to self-employed. So very important. Thou shalt not buy a car, truck, or van, or you could be living in it. There are a lot of people that go get the loan pre-approved. Guess what your client does? They go and lease a car. Oh, no, but I had a car. I just turned in the old car and I got a new car. Well, the old car's payment was 300 and something. The new, throw the ratios off. Thou shalt not use charge cards excessively or let your accounts fall behind. Again, a lot of buyers get excited. They end up in art van, right? And then yeah, bought a house. Now they measure the living room. They measure all that stuff. And then the next trip is to like get furniture. They get approved for a credit card or whatever, rack the credit card on there, but they gave me 0 for 6 months. Still, that payment is going to be counted in your debt ratio. So make sure they don't do that.
But it's also.
No, but don't count on the lender to say all those.
Or
you have to always be involved. Remember what you're doing with the buyer. You want to make sure you're solid, bulletproof the transaction. You want to be involved. You want to be involved. It's not enough to just say sign, done, see ya. It doesn't work that way. Yeah.
Use priority.
Yeah, they send it.
Not to do.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Thou shalt not spend money you have set aside for closing. Very important. Lender tells you we need X amount for closing, and all of a sudden the buyer goes and spends. Travels. Thou shalt not omit debts or liabilities from your loan application. Very important to be transparent. You got to tell the lender everything, because sooner or later they're going to find out. If you have a credit card and tell them, no, I don't have this debt or whatever, and it shows up or it pops, then it's on them. Thou shalt not buy furniture. Originate any inquiries on your credit. Shall not make large deposits without first checking with your loan officer. This one is very common. People don't have the money in the bank, but they have money with friends or cash or whatever, right? And they go to the bank and deposit a large amount of money. The lender is going to question, where did that money come from? So make sure you let your lender know, hey, I have this amount of money. What's the best way for me to go about providing it or proving it? Thou shalt not change bank accounts, and thou shalt not cosign a loan for anyone. Very common mistakes. All right, open it up. What financing problems have you encountered, and what do you do to avoid funding problems? What some of the issues you've seen on the lending side that you help you?
And like during the process of his, and he used his credit card, and when we were doing like it was a week before the closing, that has changed from conventional to FHA. Oh my God, he almost fell through, but then
Spending the money.
yeah.
Got an offer accepted and I paid change. And he was. From like 30 years before that. assigned, so he could get his issue resolved. And, no, he eventually got the appraisal, but our listing agent
Yeah, FHA.
unfortunate, but yeah.
Yeah, so funding issues, especially on the FHA side, like some of the stuff you have no control over, right? So some things like a FHA case number not being assigned from, let's say, for example, they went under contract with another FHA buyer and that deal died, and now your buyer comes in and wants to do the FHA, he has to take that same case. That case has to transfer because it follows the property. So in FHA, give yourself enough time and let the listing agent know, hey, it's FHA, we might take a little bit longer. Involve the lender into that conversation with the listing agent. Because a lot of times listing agent hearing it from us is not like hearing it from the lender. Even for the seller side. Like if I'm the seller, if the lender is calling and giving us the update, I feel a lot better than if another agent is calling me and telling me like a third party type of, I'm getting it from the horse's mouth. Like, let me hear it from the lender. What's the lender? So I have a lot of lenders that call the agent and offer to speak with their seller directly. So if you get, all right. Get to the appraisals on the seller's side. If you're working with the seller and you're getting an offer on practice too, in the event you want your offer to be reviewed by you, have the buyer pre-approve. You don't have to go through your lender. You don't have to force them to go through your. But you can have them pre-approved by your affiliate lender. Does that make sense? You can tell the buyer, or you can tell the buyer's agent, we want to take your offer. However, I'd like your buyer to at least talk to my lender. I want to make sure that they're pre-approved. For all applications or all buyers must be approved through. So that happens. That also will help eliminate those wishy-washy ones that are coming in with like pre-quals or not sure if they have the approval. Some of them, you just say, I want to make sure my lender speaks. Accomplished by doing that as a seller and a seller. You have the opportunity to bring your lender a deal. Two, now your seller is more comfortable because knowing that, hey, I don't care if the deal works with this guy or not. I know my lender will handle it. So we're good. You follow what I mean? So it accomplishes both elements. Okay, so what can a real estate agent do to make sure the buyer gets an adequate loan to make the purchase? When it comes to the appraisals, EMAs, right, for the seller. With the seller, like the value of the of the value that's the neighborhood is selling or what it's going for, listing the house at an appropriate price. Sometimes have an appraisal done if there are no comps. I've seen it happen to where there's a unique property, a barn that doesn't have there's a lot of acreage, but there's no houses around, right? So it might be special property. A lot of times buyers will come in and say, or sellers will come in and say, I don't know what it's worth. So it doesn't hurt to do an appraisal before, just like you would do an inspection before. At least they give you. And you say, okay, I have an appraisal that's worth, let's say, in the property. No. On the buyer's side, if the appraisal comes in short, additional down payment from the buyer, financial gift from parents or family, second mortgage for a seller assisted option. Again, on the seller side, also, if you're getting offers with over asking and buyer to pay the gap, and the gap is 100,000, you can ask for proof of funds for that 100,000. You can ask for where that money is. Just because you tell me you're gonna pay for it doesn't mean you have it, right? So we had a scenario where we got an offer and it was 80,000 over asking. And the buyer's agent sent the offer. So the seller wanted to take it, accept it. So he signed. I didn't tell the buyer's agent that he signed, but my seller signed it. So really, there's not much I could have done at that point. But I said, you know what? Let me call the buyer's agent. I told the buyer's agent, I said, client is willing to pay the 80,000. I told him, can you send me the proof of where the money is? So he said, yeah, sure, no problem. I'll send it. Hey, I didn't get the proof of funds yet. Just want to make sure because my seller is getting ready to sign it. Now, mind you, my seller signed. My seller's getting ready to sign it. I just want to make sure I get it to you before I go to the other. Can you send me the proof of funds? Guess what the buyer's agent tells me? No, he said my buyer is selling his house and that's how he's going to be buying this house. So the offer is contingent. But he never put in the offer contingent on the sale of his home. Wow. We're not going to tell them we signed it. We're not taking that. We're not going to take that offer because that's a contingent offer. So when you ask some questions, you'll be surprised with what the answers you get because you open up a lot. Seller or your seller wasn't aware of, you were not aware of, that would help eliminate that. Then we're done in the water.
So wait, I want to ask you, going back to that. Okay, so I literally do have a situation. I just that the house that we put a bid on, it's FHA, and it was on. Appraisal just came back, and how do I approach that with? And I have a $5,000 appraisal back guarantee. How do I approach that with?
That's
Just
it.
tell them that's it. Just tell them this is what it's for. What do you want to do?
Yeah. Not what do you want to do? I'm gonna send you. I'm gonna send you an addendum with the new purchase price of 166. And this FHA is stuck with them for 6 months.
So would they back out though? Or?
Sure.
This is.
They could.
Well,
They
the
could.
seller it was a flip. It's an agent who flipped the house.
So share with them the appraisal.
Okay.
Send them the appraisal and say, here's what the appraisal came in.
Okay.
My buyers, I have great news. My buyer still wants it, even though it's didn't appraise. My buyer still wants it.
Okay.
Also just above and beyond the sales price, that the lender is aware of the situation. What are the chances that my client is actually going to be paying? And 1, 2, 3, this way you're all.
What was the asking price? What was the list price?
175.
This price was 175 and
We
the
got
appraisal. So,
So 176.
so even at the 175, forget your offer for a second. Even at the 175, property was overpriced.
Yeah.
So Carlisle, right?
Yeah, the one in Carolina.
Okay, I know that house. Yeah, no, he'll make the deal work. I know the agent. So.
Okay.
If you need help, let me know.
Okay.
Um, okay, bro. All right, big one, huge. Some stuff happens due to communication because we don't know who the key players are in a transaction. We need to know who the key player means. In some states, there's an escrow. In our case, we are an escrow. We're not an escrow state. In Michigan, there's no escrow officer. Yes. So the lender, buyers, sellers, real estate agents or real estate lawyers, in this case us, title company, everybody needs to be on the same page. Now, what I mean by the same page is we can't person stage one when we were already all moved in and we were like ready to close, and all of a sudden, title company is not aware of it. Everybody needs to be on the same page. Or we're ready to close. Say, hey, we're ready to close, and this thing goes. Also a communication problem, because what ends up happening, you end up prolonging the process out between the buyer and the seller, saying, yeah, wait, I'm not gonna wait. Same thing can happen on the seller side. Your seller is ready and the buyer is still. So communication is very key, and communication has to happen regularly. So putting everybody on the chain, starting a chain of an email chain, and at a minimum, having the listing agent, you, the lender, and the title company on one, getting an update of where we're at as we get closer to the closing date. Stay in communication as soon as the contract is signed. Avoid misunderstanding and differing expectations. Ask questions and get things in writing. Communicate clearly and often. Huge. You ask to avoid problems in the contract to close process. So certain things can come up. First off, you have to ask, has the inspection been done? Has it been scheduled if you're on the seller side? You're on the seller side. Buyer says, we're scheduling it for today. Seller a favor, you're not doing your seller a favor, you're not doing anybody a favor. Okay? Because that deal is not going to close. Because ultimately, what do we want to happen? We want for the deal to close. So be proactive. If you're on the seller side, the buyer says, we're doing an inspection, find out, has the inspection been done? Has it been scheduled? Where are we? Need to know. They say, no, we're waiving the inspection, we're not doing it. Okay, send me in writing that your inspection has been satisfied and completed. Now I'm protecting my seller. Instead of me going back to the seller and saying, I know they had 3 days, but they just called me and said they're scheduling it for tomorrow. I don't know, now what are we gonna do? And then your seller's like, yeah, but they can't do that. No, tell them no inspection anymore. Yeah, but they're gonna back out. Now we're creating communication issues. So be upfront. Same thing with title. Has the title been ordered? Where are we at with title? Can I get a copy of the commitment? Because on the seller side, I want to see, what do I have? Does my seller own or owe 1 or 2 mortgages? Are there any liens on there? I want to address those issues early on, instead of me waiting to the end and say, this just popped up on the title. Now my seller is frustrated. Okay? So on the seller side, it's very important to get the title, get the inspection, and get the appraisal update from the lender of, was it been ordered? Are we good to go? On the buyer side, it's very important to get the update from the lender. Has the buyer been submitting to you everything you need to submit? Okay, what are you waiting on? What do you need my help with? Because sometimes the lender may tell you, I've been trying to get a hold of Francisco for a week and he hasn't been answering me. But guess what? Francisco's been talking to me every day. I just didn't know he's not talking to the lender. Now I can intervene. Zainab's been asking you for copies of your pay stubs. Can you please get them to her because, oh, yeah. I haven't had a chance to get that to her. I will. Remind them the deadline. Remind them that if we pass by that deadline and we don't close, we're technically out of contract. Seller is under no obligation to sell us the property. Seller can walk away and sell it to someone else. So make sure that they understand and they get to them on the buyer side. Okay? This is good practice when you get to when you're talking to the seller initially, when the property was purchased, what do they think they owe on the property? If there are any other needs on the property, how much seller owes the lender, whether there's a second mortgage, get them prepared to start ordering their payoff. Up the day of closing or the day here to close, buyer's ready to close, seller still doesn't have a payoff. Why? Because the agent didn't get the payoff. Don't rely on every listing agent or every seller's agent to know what they're doing. Get ahead, say, hey, do we have everything from the seller? Is the payoff ordered? Everything is done? Yeah, good. So I don't want to say do their job, but in a sense, if you want communication to be, basically have to stay engaged throughout the whole process.
So who orders the payoff? Order the payoff.
Yes, please order the payoff. Make sure you order the payoff. On your mortgage, we're going to need that when it's time to close. So have that ready. Right. Bottom line, communicate often with all key people. Spend plenty of time with your clients. Handle or closely oversee the contract to close. Anticipate problems and take preventive action to avoid them. Understand the mindset of buyers and sellers. Look for creative solutions and never give up. All right. Takeaways. We're going to leave with four takeaways. I'll give you a discount. I usually go for 10. 4 takeaways from what you heard today that you're going to apply or you're going to say to yourself, this is something I'm gonna definitely do.
Make sure everyone's.
Very important. Very important. And the sooner you get into that habit of putting everybody into communication, one team, you're all playing on the same team, they pick you up. Some days you're not going to have everything. They're going to say, oh, reminder, water bill. Remind everybody's on one team instead of everybody working on their own. Like, my part done. What about you guys? Doesn't matter. It's one puzzle. If you solve your end of it and they don't, guess what? We don't have a puzzle. So everybody's going to work together to solve.
Not screwed over really, but like on this one, on the deal that I just, as I told the agent, by the way, when we were like ready to. It took way too long. So they'll. Because I didn't tell the other agent, do you have this?
You rely, that's exactly my point, is we rely on agents.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing too that you have to be careful with. Agents are licensed in the state of Michigan. They're not licensed in the city of Dearborn or city of Dearborn Heights. So an agent in Novi could very well sell a property in Dearborn Heights. You could very well sell a property in Novi. You could very well list a property in Troy. Now, are you going to know everything? You should know at least the city requirements. But many times agents that are working or based in cities that does not require a certificate of occupancy think it's the same, right? So they go ahead and list the property in Dearborn Heights and they don't know that they have to order an inspection. Guess who they're relying on to help them? You on the buyer side say, hey, was that inspection ordered? Oh, I didn't know we need to order one. Yeah, in Dearborn you need to order one. They appreciate that. Yeah. They would rather you do that because guess what? At the end of the day, they're looking for a win. You're looking for a win. You're both looking to close the deal and make money. There's no way that you want it to close and then the other agent just doesn't want it to close.
Right, I'm dealing with
Nothing.
nothing. You don't even know what CFO is. He doesn't even know,
Yep.
nothing.
That's okay.
And he's, I mean, he's.
Yeah, it's not,
It's not his department. I mean,
it's not about the education, it's about what he's used to.
Right.
And just like we're new, there are many agents out there that are new as well. We're not gonna know. So you have the support, to help you with that. But if you know, help someone and take care of someone, we say it all the time. So it helps you eventually. All right, one more.
What's gonna happen, or what should we expect from the
Yeah.
audit? As a, if you know, we work. Done this before, so they're looking.
100%, because sell the home, right? Otherwise, they would have done it on their own, but they know they can't do it on their own. That's like they can't sell. That's like just like when they go to the doctor, they can't self-prescribe what's wrong with them. So you are the doctor of real estate in the sense that you are going to show them what's next, what's next. Now we're going to do an X-ray. What you're telling them. We're going to do an X-ray to that house. There's going to be an inflammation in some. I have vendors that I can recommend. We can solve. We're going to look for major items. Now, if God forbid the home is okay, there's issues. I'm not going to let you buy it. Okay, good. So I just want to make sure that, of course. All right. Was this helpful?
Very.
All right. All right,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you. See you soon. You're welcome. Yes. Thank you, guys on Zoom.